This happened in the early 2000s, and I'll need to tell a bit of a backstory. I do get to the point eventually, promise. I owned a '94 Saturn SC1 at the time. I loved the car, and I even had vanity plates of my favorite band. Anyway, one night I was going to meet a friend at IHOP for some coffee and conversation. It was kind of late, around 9 p.m. When I walked out into the parking lot of my apartment complex, my baby was gone. I immediately called 911 and reported it stolen. I was so shaken. Nothing like that had ever happened to me, and I honestly didn't know what to do. My friend made a detour from IHOP and came over to see if there was anything he could do to help. He couldn't, and I was so upset I'd become an irritable witch, so I asked him to go home. Besides, my brother was staying with me at the time, and he was better at providing comfort and a distraction anyway. A couple hours pass, and I get a call from a police station about half an hour away. They found my car. I could not believe it. We rushed to the station where we were escorted to a little room. They asked me a ton of questions, like, "Did you loan the car to anyone?" "No, I did not." "Was it unlocked?" "No." "Did you leave the keys in it?" "No. Someone stole it." Dudes. After about an hour, they finally came in with a complaint for me to sign and led me to the garage, where my car was finished being processed. As we walked, the officer told me I was lucky. Very lucky. The person that took my car had stolen 3 other Saturns from my area. The last one he'd taken just before mine. He wrapped it around a stop sign, fled the scene, and took my car to get away. He also added that they found my car so quickly because the officer who saw it remembered my license plates from the alert that went out over the radio. Had I not had such distinct plates, the thief may have gotten away and/or totaled my car. I found my car in almost the same condition I'd left it in, except he'd pulled off the items I had hanging from the rear view mirror, had the nerve to change all my radio presets, but best of all, he was kind enough to fill my tank with a stolen credit card. Nice little bonus, to be honest. Forward a few weeks, and his first court date arrives. I didn't have to go because they weren't sure I'd be called as a witness, but I went anyway. I sat there patiently as they read off the charges. They were numerous. Multiple counts of auto theft, credit card fraud, leaving the scene of an accident, blah blah blah. When they asked how the defendant would plead, his father stood up and whined. "My son has ADHD. He doesn't know what he's doing is wrong. He has no control over his actions. He's innocent." The judge stared at him for a moment, then again asked how the defendant would plead. The kid said, "Not guilty." They set a new trial date and all that. The state prosecutor met me in the hallway and explained that they were going to try to make a deal. There probably wouldn't be a jury trial, but if there was, I'd be contacted. As he walked away, the father approached me. He looked desperate. He asked me to drop the charges because his son was mentally ill. I looked him straight in the eye and said, "No, I won't. Besides, mine isn't the only car he stole." Then turned to leave with him trailing behind me until I got on the elevator. The next letter I received from the courts told me the kid was sentenced to 7 years. P.S. The reason why he stole Saturns is because the older models have a flaw that makes them easy to steal. For obvious reasons, I'm not going to share that detail. Story 2. The management company that oversees my apartment building has always been total trash. Packages go missing from the mailroom, repairs take forever, staff are unfriendly, not at all worth what we pay in fees. There was only one solid employee, and he almost made up for everyone else's incompetence, the janitor Ryuan. He kept everything sparkling clean and even pitched in when other people slacked off, helping with repairs, Idaho checking in the lobby, and more, just because he took pride in the building. Then the corporate oversight of the management company changed, and the new boss was having all the properties inspected to do a quality spot check on the individual building managers. Our manager, the winner that he is, decided the best course of action would be to not come on the day of the oversight visit, so that it would have to be canceled. The hope was the checker would just inspect what he could without the manager on site, which wasn't much, since he'd have already made the trip out there. My apartment has terrible cell reception and no AC, so I spend a ton of time downstairs in the lobby, which has both. I was able to overhear most of the planning for this visit as a result. Our janitor, Ryuan, knew too, and he was spiffing everything up like new in excitement. Fixing a few broken things the repair guy ignored, and even brought in fresh cut flowers to the lobby out of his own pocket. Ryuan dressed up in a collared shirt and khakis for the visit. He didn't know the manager was bailing. I just heard it hanging out in the lobby late one night. So when the corporate inspector arrived, Ryuan was the only guy he saw. He was dressed up. So the inspector shook his hand and started rattling off the things he wanted shown to him. Ryuan knows this building better than anyone else on the staff, so you could tell he was a little overwhelmed at being seen as the point person. But he knew the answers to every one of the inspector's questions. Meanwhile, a few tenants and contractors, who frequent the building, passed and all knew Ryuan, bringing him concerns about their apartments. Those on the staff who knew we were being inspected even made a point to say, "Yeah, Ryuan's the guy if you've got a problem." So the end of the inspection must have come because they congregate in the lobby. The inspector told Ryuan he wanted to get his full name so he could make a note in his employee file of how well he's run the building so far, and that he'd meet with him later in the week to discuss fixes for the problems he found. Ryuan, shocked, is like, "You want to meet with me again?" And the inspector is like, "Sure, I'm looking forward to a long working relationship. I like to meet with each building once a month." "Sorry, what was your name again, for the file?" Ryuan told him, and the inspector goes, "Hold on, I thought someone called Eddie was the manager here." And Ryuan explained, clearly embarrassed and scared he'd done something wrong, that he is not the manager. The manager didn't come in today. The inspector then went and spoke with a few people in the building on his own, while Ryuan absolutely lost it in the lobby, thinking he was going to be fired or get the building censored or something. Eventually, the inspector comes back, and he sits Ryuan down and tells him he might not be manager in title, but he's manager in action, so if he wants it, he's got a new job. The man cried. Ryuan's been working as a contractor through a janitorial service, not directly for the building, so no benefit, considered part-time, very little job security or support, and he'd just gone from that to a cushy office job in the building he loves in the blink of an eye. I was sitting on the couch a few spaces down from them. The lobby has a sitting area with tables and chairs and couches, and I felt compelled to ask, before anyone got too excited, "Hey, excuse me, can you do that? Or could someone veto this?" Because I hated to think Ryuan would be so excited only to have some sort of bureaucracy or old boys club shoot down his promised opportunity. The inspector turns to me and informs me he's the new chief operating officer of the management company, and final hiring decisions are at his sole discretion. Then he asked who I was, and I basically said, I was just leaving, and I got out of there before my big mouth complicated things any further. This week, Ryuan started officially. We've got flowers in the lobby every day now and a dripping faucet I've been waiting 6 weeks to have fixed is scheduled for repair on Thursday. He didn't work there, but he does now. Story 3. I'm a professional baker and have worked for various companies developing recipes and the like. I found a job at a local grocery store, working super early mornings on their pastries for the day. There were usually a few other people there, one of whom was a mixer. Mixers typically follow a spec sheet with the weights of all the ingredients they need to batch mix. It's kind of mindless work and doesn't require much thought. He was a young guy, fresh out of his teens. We became fast coworker friends and enjoyed chatting it up about baking, and I'd help him put our supply order away. Good times. One day, a woman with a thick Russian accent came in and handed us business cards. She told us whatever we're getting paid, her company would double it if we came to work for them. I scheduled an interview, thinking this would be a great opportunity for me. It was a new grocery store concept, like a glitzy glammy European-style Costco, whatever that means. When I went in for the interview, the place was literally still under construction. I met their lead baker, and we hit it off right away. He warned me that the big boss had interesting tastes, and we'd need to work with that. No biggie. More money, let's go. They hired us both, and over the next several months, it was a really interesting and fun experience. The big boss, thick, burly Russian man, to the point and perpetually angry, wanted this place to be like Costco, mass production of quality pastries. They were bringing in crazy amounts of new equipment, including folders, shapers, and injectors that were easily worth millions. We didn't have much equipment to start, and we were doing a lot of mixing in trash cans. Remember my mixer buddy? Well, he was working on the bread dough, using spec sheets provided by our lead baker. Over time, they were bringing on more staff, and it was a lot of fun developing new recipes, experimenting with ratios, and figuring out how to get over constraints for the types of products that boss wanted. Did I mention he was a jerk? Oh yeah. When he was reviewing some cheesecake I had made, he said, "Good job, sweetie." I came back with, "Miss, ma'am, or my name is fine." He scowled at me, and from that point on he treated me like garbage. We brought other women on staff. I watched him hit on them. Some of the others were cool with being sexually harassed, I guess. This place was paying top dollar and had to get in good with the big boss, right? So, the stage is set here. Boss quickly turned his business into a game of Survivor. He'd fire people on the spot for whatever reason. One day, one of the people he sacked was our lead baker. It came as a surprise since he was developing all the recipes we'd be using. I inherited a lot of his notes, and his development work was divided between me and the mixer. So, this whole time Mixer was sucking up to Big Boss pretty hard. He was seeing an open position with the lead baker gone, and quickly became invested in the idea of him running the bakery show and making some serious money. At the same time, my relationship with Big Boss was quickly declining. For example, I had him sample some cinnamon rolls I had made, and he came back with, "I hate these, they're terrible." What do you not like? We can change anything about them. The dough? The filling? The icing? I don't know, I just don't like them. On a hunch, I gave some cinnamon rolls from the same batch to another lady there he had eyes for, and asked her if she'd present them to him as her own. She offered him the same product I had given him minutes before, and he loved it. Anyway, I noticed that my notes were out of place one day, and a coworker informed me my mixer buddy was stealing my work and presenting it as his own. He was also approaching me and asking a lot of baking questions, which was fine, but I knew that his knowledge of industrial ratio baking was mediocre at best. He was a mixer. Following a recipe is all he knew how to do. Knowing this, I made a decoy copy of my notes, but this time I put really awful recipes with huge amounts of salt or yeast. Anyone who knew how to build a recipe could probably look at it and go, "Whoa, that's a lot." Not Mixer Buddy. My original plan was to leave this in an obvious spot as bait and let him steal the awful recipes, but Big Boss had other plans. We sat down for a pre-launch meeting, and he informed me I wasn't going to be working in the bakery anymore and being relegated to store setup. Mixer was going to be taking over as the lead baker. Guess all that sucking up really paid off, and I was to give him all my notes so far. No problem, boss. A day later was when the fun really began. Mixer mixed up a huge batch of super salty cake batter, and I heard Big Boss screaming at him about way too much salt. That's not even where the fun begins. As we were setting up industrial quantity baking equipment, we had to test the larger quantity mixing machines, and did a test run for some bread dough, with my decoy recipe that had triple the yeast and sugar. As it didn't come out right, Mixer had to throw it away. His choice: the dumpster out back in the dead heat of summer. Hundreds of pounds of dough. The fun thing about massive amounts of bread dough is that it doesn't magically stop rising if you throw it away, especially in a hot dumpster. A few hours later, I spied out back to see Mixer Buddy shoveling this massive blob of dough into trash bags that had exploded from the dumpster, like an uncovered blender spewing out a yeast-laden smoothie. Sweet revenge. Now, about the mafia thing. This store was really strange. They had been ordering doubles of all the crazy industrial baking equipment and storing them in the back. We had nowhere to put any of this. I also looked up the company they were subcontracted under, and it was to a dead address in Russia. Big Boss also had armed security guards everywhere. This was a grocery store, mind you. I had a feeling that this company was more of a front for laundering a bunch of money. I eventually was fired by Big Boss, which was great because I had been job hunting, full well knowing this business was a sinking ship. I had a new job lined up already. They had their grand opening, did business for 3 months, then closed. Rest in peace, Mixer. Story 4. Racist Romanian Karen goes berserk on my neighbor and gets fined. This story happened just a few minutes ago, and honestly, I still can't believe this happened. So a bit of backstory. I live in a small town in Romania, in which the majority of people live in flats. Those flats have 4 apartments/floor, and the doors are all stuck in an area of 3 square meters. And now the story. I went out for groceries, and I just parked my car. I enter the stairhouse, and I suddenly hear screaming. I rush upstairs to see what that was all about, and right at my door, I see my neighbor with her kids and a woman I have never seen before. Me, what happened? Neighbor, this lady. Karen cuts her off. Finally someone, this lady threatened me and tried to attack me when I exposed her. What do you mean? She thinks she can go and steal things from other people. I mean, just look at her. I know what she meant. She was thinking that my neighbor came in to steal from the apartments because she is Romani. I understand what you are saying, lady, but she lives here on the 4th floor. Neighbor, please can I go? I need to make lunch for my kids. Shut up, you. Insert Romani/Gypsy racist slur. I know you don't live here. I know everyone from this flat. I don't even know who she is. And for certain I know you don't live here. Me. Lady, please don't talk like that. We can talk like civil people. She cuts me off. What is wrong with you? How can you let such a lying witch manipulate you? She must be using spells on you. At this point, I start losing it. This lady lives here alone with her 3 daughters. You don't even live here. What are you even trying to do? A daughter. Mommy, I need to go to the bathroom. Go upstairs, dear. No, she is not going anywhere, you. Same racist slur as before. That's it. I'm calling the police. There is no need. Shut up. We couldn't get through with her, so we just let her dial the police. I can't wait for you to get arrested. After 5 minutes, the police arrive and 2 police officers enter the stairhouse. Karen. Finally. Sir, I demand you arrest this woman. She is trying to break into apartments, and she tried to attack me when I exposed her. Police Officer 1. Ma'am, is this true? Neighbor. Sir, I just live here, on the 4th floor. I am a single mother, and I need to go to take care of my daughters. Do you have proof that the apartment is yours? I have the key. She goes to her door and tests the key. Meanwhile, the police officer 2 stayed with me and the Karen at my door. The police officer 2 starts asking me questions about the event, since I'm a witness. Me. Sir, this lady is lying. She tries to get my neighbor in trouble because she is gypsy. No, she tried to assault me. She is the same racist slur, and put a spell on this young man. I know it. When the police officer hears her say that word, he seems to get a bit mad. But he couldn't do anything yet. Shut up. You don't know how this works. It's the politicians who gave them too many rights. It's not their country. Me. You talk like you know her well. She literally did nothing to you. She assaulted me. No, she didn't. Police Officer 1 came back after he heard the commotion. That's enough. She indeed lives here. She has all the paperwork. Karen, it must be forged. Police Officer 2. Stop it. It is quite clear that you have something against this lady for no reason. We ask you to leave. You dirty pigs. I'm reporting you. She's controlling you. Ma'am, please leave or we will fine you. No. Then, with absolutely no hesitation, the police officer takes out a ticket book and gives her a ticket for public disturbance and trespassing. It is 200 lei, like 40 euros. This is the first warning. Ma'am, if you don't comply, we will just arrest you. After she hears about the arrest, she suddenly softens her tone. She was still mad though. She left without saying a word. The police officers thanked me and wished me a good day. Yeah, what a good day. I honestly can't believe this happened. From my point of view, she should have been arrested, but unfortunately the law in my country is much more open towards racist insults. Moral of the story: stop being racist towards minorities. You don't know the person, so you can't know what he is like. Story 5. About a year before the whole pandemic thing, I lost my government job. I am an audiologist, and so I had little doubt I would find work. But I also knew my best bet for top earnings as to work for myself. So I secured my financing, sold a bunch of stocks and mutual funds that had done pretty well, and set about finding a property. My plan was to open a practice, but buy a building that had rentable space to help bring in an additional revenue stream. I eventually came upon this great little building in the heart of downtown with a nice, big parking lot. The building was a former commercial garage. The giant bay doors, where trucks used to come in and out of, were replaced by these really nice walls full of windows that still open like garage doors, but form a covered space in front of the units. This is relevant later. I knew the property just from being around town, and I thought they looked really cool. They are crisp and modern and, in my opinion, have a cool Scandinavian feel to them. Anyway, I love this building. As I roll up to take my first tour with the realtor and the owner, I pull into the lot, as instructed. In the second I step out of my car, I see a woman rushing out of the building toward me. I am wondering, is this the owner? Someone who works for the owner? No, it is a woman with a face full of piercings loudly telling me I need to move my car now or it will be towed. I have a meeting here, I began. She would have none of it. Move it now or I'll call the police, she said. I was about to move my car when the realtor and the owner, on the other side of the lot, called over and began walking toward me. She immediately retreated before they got close enough for us to work all of this out. I clarified that I was okay to park there, and they confirmed it was fine. I asked who that was, and they told me she owns one of the shops in the unit. Just ignore her, the owner said. She thinks she runs the place. And the realtor and owner shared a chuckle. I walk the property, and we go over some things, and life is good. I get in my car and leave pretty convinced this is the place I need to buy. Because I also intended to house my practice there, I agreed to lease one of the units and start getting set up, while all of the closing stuff that needed to happen could be completed. So for about 2 months, I was a tenant just like all of the other tenants. I never really got into the fact that I was buying the building because my interactions with my neighbors were polite but transactional. Well, mostly polite. The woman with all of the yelling, let's call her Megan, was none too pleased with my presence. She owned a store that sold custom-made, well, costumes I suppose. Lots of steampunk outfits and period costumes that she makes herself. Impressive work though, honestly. I have to imagine she does most of her trade online since I seldom see people in her place. I was there not more than a week when she barged into my unit and began making sure I was aware that the parking lot was not for customers and was for them only. And I was only allotted one spot. I said, "Thanks, but I have parking all worked out with Gus, the owner. I appreciate your concern." And I showed her the door. The parking lot, which I was purchasing along with the building, has 60 spaces. There are 5 units. According to her, we are each allowed 1 parking space and no customers or visitors are permitted to park there at all. So I know there are either shenanigans afoot or this woman is speaking out of her ass. Anyway, I ignored her. Time passes, I close on the building. Gus sends out a heartwarming thank you email to all tenants saying he appreciates their years of business together, but that the property is now owned by my company name, LLC, of which I am the owner. Pretty clear stuff. The very first thing I did was I did a reorg on the parking lot. Each unit gets 1 regular parking space, primo spots right next to the building. There are two 15-minute loading spots back there as well. I designated the next 5 closest spaces to handicapped parking. The rest was just parking. My long-term plan is to put in one of those automated parking kiosks, so people who are there to patronize the businesses can park for free, but anyone else will have to pay. But that's down the road. For now, I just need to formalize some stuff and just accept that I may have some people parking there illegally, and if it becomes a problem, I'll just have to hit the security cameras to see who is abusing the system. Anyway, Megan is furious. She is furious that there are not enough handicap spots. There were none before. She is pissed that she needs more than 15 minutes for a loading zone. Who is timing it? She is pissed most of all, however, because she was never consulted. Flash forward a few days, and I parked on a non-parking spot. The sidewalk in front of my building is privately owned. Basically, you turn off of the public sidewalk and walk down the private sidewalk to where all of the businesses are. I parked on a paved patch next to my unit, on the far side away from the public sidewalk, accessible only by my parking lot. I parked there, with every legal right to do so, by the way, because I was unloading equipment. Since I own the space I was parked on and everything around it, I didn't move my car right after. I walk outside and my car is gone. So I immediately assumed someone stole my car. Then there's Megan standing in her doorway with a big grin on her face. I ask her if she knows anything about my missing car. "Oh, was that your car? I saw a car parked illegally, so I had it towed." I said, "Laugh it up. Any expense is getting added to your rent." I went to the tow company that the prior owner hired, and I laid into him for towing anything from my property without authorization. His argument was that he had a contract with the property. He did not. He had a contract with the company that formerly owned the building that was now null. In the end, I knew arguing would get me nowhere, so I paid him and took my car. I left with hate in my heart, and my mind solely focused on revenge. I began really scrutinizing my security tapes and discovered that all of these unaccounted-for vehicles in the parking lot all had something in common. Megan. I had a suspicion that she was selling parking in my lot, so I waited by one of the cars until the guy arrived. I told him, as he walked from an area that was not my building, that he was not authorized to park there. He looked confused and told me to mind my own business, and he pays for parking. I introduced myself as the owner of the lot and asked who he was paying and how much. The answer was Megan and $125/month. Suddenly, her business made a lot more sense. I thought of confronting her. I thought of just straight up evicting her. Instead, I hired a security company. They set up a temporary booth at the entrance of the parking lot, and a guard ensured that everyone there was there for one of the businesses. If someone parked and wandered off somewhere else, they were told they were going to be towed. Anyone who claimed to be paying for parking would just be turned away. What followed was around 24 very angry people in Megan's store over the course of the week. They paid good money for those spots, and now she was pulling out the carpet. People were mad. Megan lays pretty low for a while. Then COVID strikes, and we're all rightly in fear for our livelihood. As soon as it was legal, I told the tenants they could open the big garage door and have a covered outdoor space for their trade. This was a necessary thing to keep them open and was outside the scope of their lease since they were not allowed to put in outdoor seating, etc. Everyone is super happy about this, except Megan. Megan's unit is flanked by a coffee shop on one side and a little specialty bakery on the other. So you now have to walk around an outdoor seating area to get into her store. It's the same situation for my unit, however, and it just isn't that big of a deal. Megan is fuming. She starts calling the police multiple times a day, every day, for supposed COVID violations on my part and the part of the other tenants. This was after, by the way, I said absolutely nothing about her being in her store and working even when non-essential businesses were supposed to be closed. The cops stopped coming after her third or fourth call. At this point, I had enough. Her lease was up last May, and so I non-renewed it. She threatened up and down that she was going to sue me, and when she was done the whole building would be hers. I responded by suing her for the $125 a month she collected from all of those people for parking. Best of all, she just didn't show up to court, and so it resulted in a summary judgment in my favor. I don't expect I will collect, though she abandoned at least a few $1,000 worth of inventory and equipment when she left, so that will help. Story 6. So characters are me, Karen, the annoying entitled brat of a woman, and my lovely manager, who had also lost his job with the store closing. I used to work at a, let's say, higher-end supermarket in the UK. They decided to close a few of their stores, and we unfortunately were on the chopping list. I loved the people I worked with, the actual job, and the hours were great, super close to home too. But my days I could not deal with the customers. After 8 years in customer service roles, I became jaded, but I digress. Fast forward to our last day. We had other staff called in from multiple stores to basically do our jobs, as the big bosses decided that this would be a tough day. Some people had been at the store for a number of years. We are still in uniform, sort of, but it's fairly obvious we are not working today. So, we have a reduced bay full of high-end reduced goodies that I had been previously dying to try, mainly Heston stuff and a lot of cheap prime cut steaks, etc. I dutifully called my mum to let her know that along with my discount, there is a big all-meat sale, shall we stock up? Reply was a basic yes. I grab a trolley and start stocking up. 2 minutes later, it looks like I've completed a trolley dash. Happy with my selection, I started to head towards the checkout. At this point, I'd also like to add that it was my manager who let us all know about the big all-meat reduction and basically told us to get over there for first dibs. So, heading towards the checkout, and I was slammed into my cart, that is, by, you guessed it, a Karen. These were not well-known creatures at the time. We mainly referred to these people as just jerks. So, the interaction starts with Karen trying to select things from my trolley. She was in there like a mole in a hole rooting through my shopping. Me, excuse me? Sorry, that's my trolley. I followed that by a tired but friendly smile. Karen, what do you mean your trolley? You work here. Yes. So you, she proceeds to look me up and down in a condescending way, can't shop here. Sorry, but I can shop here, and you're rooting through my trolley. I then try to go towards my original checkout destination. She proceeds to grab my shoulder and verbally undress me in the middle of the aisle. Her flow was along the lines of, I'm a rude witch and should not be shopping here as I work here, and all the goods in my trolley should be for actual customers, and I'm a witch for hoarding reduced goods. I then roll my eyes. 8 years of nonsense from people just like her, and that I am saying goodbye to a job, no other lined up as of yet, and leaving all my friends I have had. I turn to her and tell her in no uncertain terms to get her hands off my trolley and leave me alone. Her eyes were like saucers. I remember the look on her face quite clearly, as I had been dreaming of the day I could just tell a customer to get lost, instead of killing them with kindness. It was ace, no regrets. She proceeds to storm down the aisle towards my exasperated boss, who had clearly seen what had occurred. Karen then starts yelling at him, which was hilarious. The guy was like 6'2" and Karen was approximately 5'2". She started with the finger wag and excessive pointing at me. I probably didn't help as I was smirking the whole time. After her rant, she looked him as much in the eye as she possibly could manage and asked him what he was going to do about it. His reply: Miss, I am going to do this as sweetly as possible. The store is closing. I have no job. She has no job. Get a life and get lost. Karen went beetroot red, stuttered, and no words left her vacant hole of a mouth. My manager smiled at her and simply walked away. He looked super satisfied with how he handled it. I paid for my stuff, placed it in the cafe fridge, and made my way to the canteen. I was greeted by the manager with a beer. Genuinely, the canteen fridge was stocked with San Miguel, sweet thanks. We toasted a successful customer interaction and spent the rest of the day acting like children. We played rounders in the delivery depot. Our managers had an epic game of hide and seek, and the whole of our store ended the night in our favorite pub, with a sweet £500 courtesy of management stashed behind the bar. It was a sweet last day and made all the more satisfying, thanks to a Karen.